Welcome to episode 11 of AI Solutions, the Pathway to Profit. Today, we're tackling something that I see trip up a lot of smart executives, explainable AI, and why those black box models are a ticking time bomb for your business. I want you to picture a real scenario I saw play out. A lender rolls out a new AI model for mortgage approvals. It's fast. It's supposedly accurate. Then a long-time customer with a solid record gets denied. He calls his loan officer asking for a reason, and the only answer anyone can give is model prediction denied. That's it. That's the black box problem, and it's a massive hidden liability. In this episode, we're going to unpack exactly what these opaque models are, the very real dangers they pose, and how explainable AI gives you the crucial visibility you need to actually be in control of your own business. So let's properly define this term, black box AI. What are we actually talking about? The way I like to think about it is imagine a master chef who creates the most incredible dish you've ever tasted. It's perfect, but when you ask for the recipe, they just shrug. They can't explain the exact process. That chef's brain is the black box. In tech, this is often a deep neural network, a system so complex that even its creators can't fully trace how it connects your data to its final decision. You get the result, the prediction, but the process remains a mystery. And what I often see is that this is where the real problem begins, because a fantastic result without a repeatable, understandable process is fundamentally at odds with business accountability. You can't build a strategy on a mystery. So it's a fair question to ask. If these black boxes are such a risk, why do we even build them? What I see is that they're often born from a very understandable place, the relentless pursuit of accuracy. For incredibly complex jobs, like spotting a fraudulent transaction in milliseconds or recognizing a specific face in a crowd, models with billions of parameters just plain outperform simpler ones. For a long time, you might find there was a clear trade-off on the table. You could have a model that was transparent, or you could have one that was incredibly accurate. But the industry is finally waking up to something I've been guiding clients on for years. Accuracy without understanding is a fragile victory. If you can't explain how you won, you can't guarantee you'll win the next time, and you certainly can't prove you won fairly. So let's talk about the first, and maybe the most immediate, risk. What I often see is that the biggest hurdle isn't external. It starts right inside your own building. It's a crisis of trust. You can invest a huge amount of capital into a brilliant AI tool, but if your own team doesn't understand how it arrives at its conclusions, you might find they simply won't trust its recommendations. And an untrusted tool is an unused tool, which means your ROI is zero. I saw this play out with a logistics firm. Their supply chain AI suggested a really counterintuitive routing shift. On paper, it saved millions, but because it couldn't provide a clear why, the experienced operations manager just defaulted to his gut. All that potential value just gone. So if losing internal trust wasn't enough of a risk, let's talk about the external pressures, which is often a full-blown compliance nightmare. This is where I see the stakes get incredibly high. You might find that regulations like GDPR, with its right to explanation, make these black box models a direct legal liability. In highly regulated sectors, think finance, insurance, and especially healthcare, you are legally required to justify your decisions. Let's walk through a scenario I guide my clients to avoid. An AI recommends a specific treatment plan for a patient. That decision must be auditable. A doctor has to be able to explain the clinical reasoning. When a black box is involved, that reasoning is lost. The only answer is the model said so, which isn't a defense. It's an admission of risk, exposing the organization to staggering lawsuits and fines. But this brings us to what I believe is the most insidious risk of all: hidden amplified bias. AI models learn from the data we give them. What I often see is that if that data reflects decades of historical or societal bias, and let's be honest, it often does, the model will not only learn it, but it can actually amplify it. And here's the trap you might find yourself in. Because the model is a black box, you can't look inside to audit for fairness. You can't ask it why it's favoring certain profiles. Let's walk through a recruiting AI scenario I help clients avoid. You might find that by training the AI on 20 years of past hiring data, it quietly learns to penalize resumes with certain names or from certain universities, effectively creating a massive ethical and reputational crisis, all from a system you thought was making things more objective. So, after discussing all these risks, from legal nightmares to hidden bias, you might be wondering if it's even worth it. This is the point where I guide my clients toward the solution. And that solution is Explainable AI, or XAI. What I see is that XAI is a set of tools and practices designed to do one thing: make AI decisions understandable to humans. What you might find is that the goal isn't to sacrifice that incredible performance we talked about. Instead, what I like to do is build what we call a glass box, or at the very least, hand you a flashlight to peer inside the black box. Let's revisit that master chef. We're moving from just being handed the final dish to getting the full recipe card, complete with notes explaining why each ingredient was chosen and why it works. It's about moving from mystery to mastery. So, what does it actually look like to flip the lights on inside that black box? This is where I guide my teams to get practical. We don't need to become PhDs in mathematics. We just need the right tools. One of the first things I like to use is a technique called SHAP. Think of it as a contribution report for every single AI decision. It shows you exactly how much each factor, say a customer's income level versus their credit history, pushed the final outcome one way or the other. It's incredibly powerful. Then, for a more focused view, you might find a tool called Lime is what you need. What Lime does is answer a very specific question. Why did this particular customer get this result? It creates a simple, local explanation for just that one decision. So if the big model is a mystery, Lime gives you a clear snapshot of the one moment that matters to you right now. Let me walk you through a real-world example I often share with my clients in the financial sector. What I saw was a major bank that had adopted a powerful but completely black box AI for their loan approvals. And you can probably guess what happened next. They soon found themselves under intense regulatory scrutiny. They couldn't explain their decisions. So what I guided them to do was integrate an XAI framework on top of their model. The change was immediate. Now you might find that when the AI flags an application for denial, the loan officer doesn't just see a no. Instead, what I like to see is a clear breakdown that says something like rejected due to high debt-to-income ratio, which had a 65% impact, and a short credit history, which contributed another 25%. Instantly, the auditors have a trail, the staff feels empowered, and the customer gets valuable feedback. That's how you turn a liability into an asset. So we've established how XAI acts as a shield. But what I guide my clients to see is that its real power is as a sword. It creates a true competitive advantage. You might find that the conversation shifts from mitigating risk to actively improving performance. When you build that bridge of understanding between your people and your AI, What I like to see is a new level of collaboration. Your team starts making faster, more confident decisions because they trust the tool they're working with. And it's not just the business side. For your developers, it's a game changer. Debugging a model goes from a week-long treasure hunt to a targeted fix. Ultimately, this transparency builds a bedrock of trust that extends to every stakeholder, from the boardroom right down to your end customer. Now, as we walk this path, it's important to be realistic. This isn't just about flipping a switch, and you might find there are a few hurdles to clear when bringing XAI into your organization. First, there can be some computational overhead. Getting these explanations does require extra processing power. What I also guide teams to be cautious of is the risk of a too simple explanation, which can create a false sense of security. And critically, what I see as essential is having the right people. You need that blend of deep data science and sharp business domain knowledge. So where do you start? What I always recommend is to not try and boil the ocean. What I like to see is a focus on your most high-stakes and regulated AI applications first. That's where a black box poses the greatest immediate risk, and where you'll get the fastest and most crucial return. So, let's bring it all together. What I hope you're taking away from our discussion is that while black box models can be incredibly powerful, you might find their lack of transparency presents risks in trust, compliance, and fairness that are simply unacceptable for a modern business. What I guide my clients to see is that explainable AI is that essential bridge. It's the tool that turns an opaque process into something transparent, auditable, and frankly, a far more valuable business asset. Join us next time on AI Solutions, the Pathway to Profit, where we'll explore the creative frontier in generative AI for marketing, beyond ChatGPT cliches. We'll walk through how you can use these generative tools to create truly original and impactful marketing campaigns. I'll see you then. If you find this information useful, we would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe this channel to help others find us. If there are subjects you would like covered, please add in the comments section, and we will include it in future episodes. Thanks for watching.